This video represents a strict application of after-action review discipline to the entirety of the United States COVID-19 public health response. The standard is collect, don't connect. We will present documented records and flag weak evidence, letting the range of defensible interpretations speak for itself. We are weighing an asymmetric ledger. On the left side, documented costs. On the right, modeled benefits. The findings show costs that are massive and directionally certain, set against a benefit case that relies on a small number of heavily contested modeling inputs. Auditing systemic risk policy requires the viewer to sit with this evidentiary asymmetry, without a rush to partisan conclusions. The cost side of the ledger begins with the most concrete macroeconomic metric available: federal fiscal spending. 6 federal relief laws enacted across 2020 and 2021 provided $4.6 trillion in direct funding, with the total fiscal response exceeding $5.6 trillion. This drove federal debt from 79% of GDP in 2019 to 97% by 2022, representing the largest deficit to GDP ratios since World War II. The second systemic cost is the educational impact of long-term school closures. Estimates for lifetime learning loss show a 45 times methodological spread. A Harvard and Dartmouth estimate puts lost income at $600 billion. A Stanford analysis estimates a 5.6% reduction in lifetime earnings, totaling $28 trillion in lost economic activity. Even the low end of this range represents a cost larger than almost any other single line item in the federal budget. These abstract figures translate into physical, individual-level economic friction. We can examine this by looking at workers terminated under vaccine mandates. A funnel analysis isolates a specific fact pattern within that group: high-earning, late-career individuals in fully remote roles. The final filter accounts for individuals with active, serious medical conditions who were dependent on employer-sponsored coverage. For those matching this exact pattern, modeled lifetime costs run into the high 6 or low 7 figures per case. Because there is no in-person contact factor for a fully remote role, the public health transmission reduction benefit of these specific terminations approaches zero. Compounding harms, fiscal debt, generational learning loss, and individual financial destruction occupy the left side of the ledger as documented realities. Shifting to the right side of the ledger requires examining the anchor metric used to justify the response. That anchor is the Imperial College model projecting 2.2 million unmitigated deaths. This counterfactual rests on 2 assumptions that shrink against documented evidence. Assumption 1. The model assumed zero voluntary behavior change, no crowd avoidance unless mandated by government. The model's authors acknowledged this was unlikely, and no country, including those with minimal lockdowns, approached the projected mortality rate. Accounting for the caution people exercise voluntarily means the number of deaths actually attributable to formal policy, rather than spontaneous behavior change, shrinks. Assumption 2. Severity. The model assumed an infection fatality rate, or IFR, of 0.9%. Internal communications from early 2020 suggest top health officials viewed the true severity differently. Diary entries from February 8, 2020, show Dr. Anthony Fauci and Dr. Tom Frieden concluded the fatality rate was likely 0.2 to 0.3%, reasoning that the true number of infections was far larger than confirmed cases. 1 month later, Fauci testified to Congress that the rate was about 3. Applying the internal 0.2 to 0.3% estimate to the model scales the unmitigated death toll down to a range of 500,000 to 700,000. The United States recorded 1.28 million actual excess deaths with the response in place. Correcting the foundational model with private internal data reveals an internal inconsistency. Under this specific framing, the model no longer provides a clear mathematical basis for claiming the response prevented net excess mortality. We now return once more to the left side of the ledger for a final, devastating operational cost. Institutional trust is the delivery mechanism for public health interventions. Without it, the capacity to respond to future crises is diminished. Longitudinal studies tracked public confidence in federal health institutions from 2020 through 2024. High confidence in the CDC fell from 82% in February 2020 to 56% in June 2022. By 2024, that confidence had only recovered to 60%. Meanwhile, trust in personal physicians recovered past the pre-pandemic baseline. This suggests the erosion was specific to federal institutions and their public messaging, rather than a collapse in trust toward medicine as a concept. Institutional credibility is the capacity to be believed when speed matters. If a material share of this trust erosion traces directly to the gap between confident public messaging and private assessment, then the loss of trust is a direct cost of how the policy was communicated. This is the completed ledger. The left side contains trillions in debt, generational educational damage, and a documented erosion of public trust in core institutions. The right side holds a benefit case built on an unrealistic model, using severity inputs that internal communications suggest were known to be too high at the time. A rigorous audit requires sitting with the asymmetry of this evidentiary record, rather than seeking a simple verdict. Was it worth it?